booth in the hall, which when you walk into the vendor's hall, it's literally the very first thing you'll see. And if you visit us, we will happily help to give you access to all of those events that we do record this week. We can't be everywhere at once, so we're not recording all of them, but I would say we're recording probably 2/3 to 3/4 of them. So there's going to be quite a few videos from this weekend, including some really great material with Matt Forback, Jim Zub, Jeff Richard, Ed Greenwood, who are bringing some of their knowledge and talents to the writing track as well. But today we're here for the working writers model. And the way that this one typically works is we kind of walk you through, we do this in 3 parts. We're going to walk you through what are all of the steps for an author for moving from idea in your head to product in your audience's hand, whether that's a digital product, a physical product, whatever that product is for them. What are all the steps that take place from A to Z and double A to double Z and so on and so forth. Then we talk about the skill and joy index, and that's going to be kind of the key. And then we talk about the 9 steps to the working writers model. But before we do that, we have an interesting gathering with us today. So I'm going to start at the far end over there with our Working Writers Mastermind momager, and let's introduce yourself and say why you are up here with us today.
Okay, so hi everyone, I'm Heather Skolinica, and I am the official mom of this group. So I am the mom of this one, and so I've gotten involved as more the business side. So she does the writing, and I make sure everything else happens when it should, and things so that she can just write for right now. Someday she will have to either hire me or go ahead and do the business side as well. But for now, I take care of that. So I'm also part of the Working Writers Mastermind. So a lot of the sessions are more geared towards me than for her.
Yeah, and just to do a side note on that before we move on to Momager's daughter, we do allow as young as 15 when we do our coaching program, which is separate from this. Take all the free stuff first, check it out first. But whenever we are working with somebody who's like in that 15 to 17, we will be adding their parent as well, or their legal guardian as well to the group, because we would not want our authors and our writers to be making any of those decisions outside of the view of their parents. So.
Then I'm Ivy Rue, if you didn't already know. I'm an only child, if you couldn't tell. I joined this as a mentee, and I've been able to do some of my first publications through this program, my first panels, and yeah, I'm up here to kind of give you the inside look of the other side of the program. Yeah.
I am TR Nickel, otherwise Tiffany Rose Nickel. I have been officially a full-time working creative for the last 1.5 years, but I've been writing publicly published for 3 years. I also delve into game writing and development, but really what I've done is I've worked almost in every aspect of the creative spectrum, so from copywriting to social media management for other authors, such as this one, that's how we met. But I've done web development, so really anything that's in the creative spectrum of design, graphic, whatever, I've been involved with all of that. And I go by Red. I write under the names Jeri Shepherd, Reggie LaBerge, and Maggie McMahon. I've been writing my entire life. I've been professional in some way, shape, or form. I will be hitting year 31 this year. So even though Heather is our momager, I am older than her. So I'm primarily focusing today on sci-fi and game writing, and that's both game writing that I do on my own with Rose, and game writing that people hire me to work with other people, whether it's working with Luke's projects. Excuse me. It's been a long day of talking. I just said to you guys earlier, it's only Thursday. Or it's like working on other projects that people bring me into edit and whatnot for. And I will probably
likely not be doing as much talking because the voice is already going. But Chris will be joining us. I'll let him introduce himself when he gets here. And really what we will be talking about is the fact that all of us have very unique and different approaches to how we take that gift of art, that gift of writing, that art of writing, that craft of writing, and we turn it into something monetizable. And so, with that said, I'm actually going to start at you,
Yes.
Tiffany, and we're gonna keep me out for as long as possible until I have to interject. The way we always open up with this is we say we're going to literally move from idea in your head to product in the hand, and we're just going to tell you what are the steps. And so I'm going to have the three of you guys kind of
Sounds
going back
good.
and forth until I need to
Yeah.
chime in.
So, yeah, like Retta's saying, is we're going to just throw out literally every single thing. You do not have to write all these things down because you likely will get a sore hand because there's going to be about 50 of them. So the thing about being an indie author is that you wear all of the hats. It is something that you have to consider every single aspect of a business, where corporations typically have heads of businesses and people in which do smaller tasks like layout or adjusting an image or coming up with the name, like all those things, right? That's all on you. And so we're it's going to sound overwhelming, but we're going to walk it back and make it manageable for you. So really what we're starting with is that idea. You're in a car driving somewhere and suddenly you're like, why don't I write that? So that's really the first step of this is first you have to come up with something. Yep.
As your publisher, I know that you are in this process right now. What
Yes,
next?
you have the idea.
What's the next thing?
So, I mean, we talk a lot about throughout this program, and you'll probably hear these in different writing panels, is plotter versus pantser. So this is really introducing your next step. So I am definitely more of a plotter. I like to have my outline completely finished. So I'll say, in this chapter, I want the characters to go into this new area of the city, or I want relationship growth to happen. I actually do post-it notes, color coordinate. It's very fun. And whereas the might be like, okay, here are my 5 ideas, and I want this to happen. And one thing that I think is really interesting with the difference between those is that both still have a level of that planning. So you want to make sure that if you have the idea for the end of the story, you want to go backwards. If you're completing a maze on a kid, you don't start at the beginning because that's too hard. So I like to go on like ideas throughout. I don't know. I keep a Google Doc of every idea I've ever had. Idea locker, yes. And so if I find, oh, I want this to be the end of the story, then I go back to that and say, oh, I really like this part of this story. And they might not have the same magical powers, but I can use that idea in other ways.
So from your idea to your kind of fleshed out outline.
Yeah.
All right, you've been along for the ride, Mom. You're ready to
Yeah. You better get an email address and a website as this is happening. Like literally everything needs an email address. So if you get that first, you're gold. We did not. Nope. And now we're trying to change email addresses on things, and it is not easy. If we would have just had the email address first, then everything would have been a little easier.
A big point too is everything that we're talking about is happening at one time. It is not, oh, I get this and then move on to this. And it is while you're writing your book, you're also marketing your book, you're also curating your website, you're also going to be doing a bunch of these things that we're talking about. So the timeline can be real fun. But yeah. So once you've outlined, you're starting to build which kind of leads into it is your identity, your branding, right? As an author, you are as much as your brand as Pepsi is a brand, right? You have to think about what do I want my fonts to look like across the spectrum, whether that's website, how you introduce yourself on pamphlets, flyers. You need to have your colors. What are those hex codes for everything? So that way everything can be consistent. What is the type of genre? So really figuring out what is you're going to be presenting yourself as you are the author, you are the brand. So that really has to start on an end as
well. I think a really important thing about that, creating a brand, if you are going to use a pen name, you really need that like right away. So my first publication is not under my pen name, so I can't really use that for anything. But after finding it, I think it's a lot easier to get into that like mindset of the author. I don't really know how to explain it. It's like pretending to be an author character, but it's also you.
It's like playing a game.
Right,
Yeah.
And that is kind of a sidebar in the process order, but as somebody who writes with multiple pen names, each of those pen names has a brand. And those different brands, the way that I make that work is I have them fall one also another umbrella brand. But it's you're able to do it. It took me a long time, and anybody who's interested in understanding how to navigate those waters of working with, and there are a lot of reasons to go that route. I'll have a one. That's like a whole.
That's
That's a
other
whole timeline. So we've got a script. We've established our info. We've done our outline. Now you're gonna have to edit. So let's say you finished your draft. We're gonna go past the story part because again, the craft, that's a whole thing. That's a whole thing. We'll happily talk you through the process. You need to have an edit. Your first draft is not your final draft. And there are multiple ways to approach that, but your edit is the next piece. And then after
Yeah, so there's 3 forms of editing. There's the developmental edit, so that's the broad picture of like building out the world, of like making sure there's no holes. And then it goes into line edit, which are the fine details, those grammatical errors, making sure maybe this paragraph goes down
That'll
here.
be the copy.
Yeah. And but then it also then goes into the proofreading as well. So ensuring that everything lines up exactly as it is. Those edits were made and adjusted and coordinated for and all of that. So once you've accomplished those different forms of editing, this is where you have to decide, okay, how am I going to publish this? In which there's different publication options. You have traditional, so that would mean you would need to go find an agent and go through the.
So you can go Big 5,
Yeah.
and do agenting or
Yeah.
do your writer's market, or you can do a niche publisher that isn't going to require agented submissions.
Yeah,
Or choose the indie.
Yeah, and there's indie publishers as well, and hybrid. So there's a few different options. Indie publishers will typically be like a paid service in which you're like, you do the things that I don't want to do, like distribution or getting printer set up, and that they'll take care of it. You pay for that service, and you own 100% like royalties and everything. Hybrid, it's so dependent on the publisher because sometimes they'll have like a strict year, like 2 years, you're only receiving a portion of the royalties. Other times it's you receive full royalties, but we have to do a distribution. So with that one, it's so dependent on that. And then the indie route is you do everything.
And picking your path does not mean you're picking your path for life. It doesn't even mean you're picking your path for a season. You can pick a path for each project.
Yeah.
And for those of you, do we have anybody in here who's a game writer? Okay, so you guys are all looking at books. So obviously, Jason is one of our game writers. We love him. But a lot of these same, choosing that path, that's going to exist on the game side as well. Like choosing what path you're going to have. So once you've chosen your path, what's next?
Well, once you've chosen a path, I mean, you have to find somebody who will work with that with you, of course. But that's kind of with the choosing. I don't know, you start writing.
So
So
we've got our book,
we're done, right?
we're edited, we've done our brand, we've got our publishing path. So let's talk layout, design, cover, all of these options. Chris was supposed to be here by now, so he could give us a lot of insight on this. These are all actually different artistic elements of a book.
Yeah.
Somebody who does layout is not necessarily a graphic designer. Somebody who's a graphic designer is not necessarily the cover art illustrator or cover art designer. Those could be, You might have somebody who's able to do all three, or you might be able to do all three, which we'll talk when we get into the skills index. But really, graphic design, art, and layout are three separate things. So when you think of your list of what it takes to go from bucket list to bookshelf, you need to see all those as three separate things.
Once things are laid out and you have all the pretty ideas and things collected, this is where you're going to start really your pre-launch phase in the marketing campaign. You should always market even when writing a book, right? You get people hyped up about the ideation, so that way once you're in it and ready to start actually the pre-launch, then people are already kind of aware of what it is you're doing. But in that pre-launch stage, this is you doing the cover reveal and building up hype of like, this book's coming out on this date, and really setting people up of like, you need to be watching for this.
Yeah. So something I actually recently did was analyze these lovely people's social media pages for my social media class. And no, I did. Because
This is the first one hearing of this, and you're taking my class.
And what I saw in a lot of them was that this is coming out now, but they weren't getting as much traction as those ideation ones. So what I've seen is more powerful is if you continue almost the ideation process into your publication. So it's like, I had so much fun doing this part of this book. I'm so excited for you guys to read it. So talking specifically without giving like spoilers draws people in a little bit more.
It's that comparative, right?
Right.
So people are like, if you like Gilmore Girls and Practical Magic, you're gonna like this. And so it gives them an idea of like, this is what to expect, but in my own twist.
And honestly, each of those types, so now that we're talking, remember we said there's everything in these lists. So
Yeah.
now you're gonna have different types of engagement.
Yeah.
So there is your type of engagement that's a sales type, straight up sales engagement, where you're like, hey, this is coming, get the thing. There's your engagement where they're getting to know you, where you're either sharing something personal or like, it can even be like surface personal, but you're just like, they're relating to you. It could be like, this is the ideas I have and whatnot. And then there's the engagement where you're relating to them. So my most popular TikToks, and I did delete TikTok on the big TikTok day of 12 hours. I was like, that's one less I gotta worry about. Done.
But as your ex-marketer,
It's horrifying.
I know. I was like, nope, it's all right, because you know what? My readers are age 18 to 35 males, and they're not on TikTok as much as your fantasy readers. But I was like, with that engaging, one of my most popular was my martini moments.
Yeah.
When I used to talk about, hey, these are the sci-fi, fantasy, and action moments that really tick me off and then make me want to have a drink. And what I was doing is I was relating to who are my readers, what's interesting to them. So there's really those three types of engagement, and that's all happening during this pre-launch and this launching phase. And so we've got our book, we're in our pre-launch. What comes after our pre-launch? I know this is you.
So yeah, once you have the book, there's different ways actually in terms of the launching period, right? Because you could be going the Kickstarter route, right? So right now it's pretty popular for authors. Darby Harn, Chris does it for books that instead of just launching their book, they actually kickstart it. So that way they're already building up awareness and all of that alongside their launch. Otherwise, there's launch parties. I'm sure you have heard of those. Yeah. So there's launch parties. There's ways to get people engaged. Live seminars, like going live on YouTube, Twitch. There's different ways to get people engaged with the launch that allows you to kind of have a little fun with it and boast it up. But that takes planning. You have to think about, okay, what's the best path for me? What is the audience in which I've already obtained or want to obtain? What is the best path to them for them to be aware that this thing is happening and launching? So that kind of goes into that. But then otherwise, there's like the launch of just uploading it to Amazon, uploading it to Barnes & Noble and the different not Barnes & Noble, but like,
Well,
yeah. I was thinking
So-
draft to digital, but like
Yeah.
there's your distributors and getting those up, getting all that uploaded for the launch?
So launch is really, you're describing it, it's distribution. So once you have this great idea that you had in your car way back at the beginning of this process, you have to realize that there are like so many ways to maximize that intellectual property, to maximize getting it in a person's hands. So there is, there's KDP, right? That's gonna be like Amazon's basic, or there's Ingram, which is gonna be like a retail or wholesale basic. But on top of that, there are hundreds of other ways to get your content out there. First of all, you're gonna get it out in multiple formats. You're gonna get it out in soft cover, you're gonna get it out in hardcover, you're gonna get it out in ebook format, you might get it out in audiobook format. And you might, though this is starting to has really lost, I think that the Wattpad era has kind of died. But like you can put it out chapter by chapter. Wattpad is good if you're a romance author. Do you have any romance authors in the room? Good.
I am a romance author as well. I write romance. It's fantasy, but it's romance.
Okay.
She
runs reverse harem, though.
Okay. That's one of my books. The rest of them are not as romantic as
But I wouldn't call them romance. They have romance in them.
Yeah, you were in Pinecone Legend. You were romance author. What are you talking about?
Maggie?
Yeah. Maggie McMahon.
Here's the thing, is what I mean by that though, is romance is the only one that really still has traction in the chapter by chapter release.
Yeah.
So you're gonna figure out your distribution. That's going to be, you're going to figure out where are all the ways that I want this book available, because that's going to be that next step is to get the distribution. And then why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and talk to us a little bit about sales, and then we'll talk skill and joy.
Sure. So my name is Chris Schmitz. I write books that nerds like. I do most of my sales face to face. I've dabbled a little bit in that new chapter. That's a conversation I walked in on. Even the reason I'm late is because I had a guy who was really interested in a book, and then he wanted to put the whole series. It was the big series.
Nice.
And my helper, okay, he's like, yeah, you mentioned me. Kind of talks like, you're doing 3 books, so why not 9? So I was signing books. So I do a lot of face-to-face, in-person distribution as well as online. I have a website where a lot of people are gravitating now towards not having Amazon being their primary, even their preferred distributor. Why don't I make most of the money, handle all the legwork in between? Once I have the books in hand, I can, if I have a mechanism to do that, and we actually have, I know we've got a pre-recorded lesson on that I taught on how to set that up online. So you can just click the button. Oh, we're gonna be here in 2 days.
You know, it's funny. So TikTok Shop is actually changed and influenced kind of how book buying really adapted in the last year. Is that a lot of indie authors went onto there and dealt with their own shipping and their own handling, because that was where they were making their most money, while also, especially in the fantasy genre, that's where most of their audience was.
Yep.
So they took out the big name that was taking a bigger cut to do that. Yes, it
the
is
power of
more
book
work.
talk
Yes,
is big.
it is
And it's
big,
not that much. If you have a bunch of boxes, shipping boxes, if you can run a printing label through real easily, know the weights on it, like things like Pirate Ship, which is a shipping service. It's pretty easy. You know what your rates are because you know what your weights are. Just click it all, boom, send it out the door, and it's good.
Books also get shipped for cheaper if it's just books. So that's a fun little fact to know if you go to the
Medium
mail
mail.
store. Yes.
That's called, you can bulk bound printed material or medium mail.
And
So
so
will cost less.
not
and
to
it's
bust your bubble, but it is now more expensive. I mean, with the newest USPS updates, except they do the free
Insurance
tracking.
tracking.
Yeah. So you get that. If you were to add that on top of what's called cubic rate shipping, cubic rate's the cheapest, although sometimes UPS is even cheaper. Luckily, I have a lawyer's office right next to me. I have a UPS drop box. If it's 1 or 2 books, I'll just slap that thing, drop it. I literally walk across the streets for my orders.
So this is gonna be the direct sales. So basically your sales routes.
Now
you're
that
going
you
to
launched.
So you set up all your distribution. So we walked through that whole book process. when you're in the sales mode, there's going to be your live sales, which are stuff like this, doing the live shows. There's going to be your direct sales, which are different than live sales. It's like what Chris was talking about, what Tiffany was talking about, where they're the shops and you're the one doing, setting the books out and whatnot. There's going to be your online sales, and then there's going to be your retail and bulk sales as well. So your retail sales, you're going to need to be in either Ingram or Baker and Taylor. You can get into Baker and Taylor by just putting your book up on draft to digital. It's the word draft, the number 2, the word digital, all one word, .com. They'll also get it in your
Ingram by Ingram Spark.
Ingram Spark, or is it still Lightning Spark now?
It's Ingram Spark. So
Ingram
Lightning Spark
Spark.com.
uses Ingram's shipping stuff, but Ingram Spark will put you on both.
Yeah, so then you'll get the retail and the libraries. Baker and Taylor is going to be your libraries. Ingram is going to be most of your stores. This was something, sidebar, Chris can relate because we've both been both trad and indie. That was a massive change in the indie publishing world when everybody could use Baker and Taylor and Ingram, because it used to be the reason that Barnes and Noble said we can't carry your book because it wasn't returnable for them to the different distributors. So setting it up with these distributors other than KDP means that you are on a level playing field for getting your book into these stores with people that are coming from the big 5 publishers or those other publishers.
Quick shout out to Studio Moonfall, which is in Kenosha. It is by far one of the most indie friendly and inclusive bookstores in the state of Wisconsin. It's down in Kenosha. Donovan Shear, who actually has a booth here at GaryCon, he runs the Kenosha Book Festival all throughout the summer. So literally there's one a month, and you will see 40 to 50 different authors that he rotates through. And there is no other bookstore that I know of in the Midwest even that does what he does for the indie community and authors. So I wanted to shout him out because
And there's a few options for you to get your book into his store, different ones that you can use. So we've kind of talked, and honestly, each of these things that we sort of mentioned, there's kind of a whole breakdown of other things, and we're happy to talk you through some of those. But you've got your whole, we've gone from bucket list, we've gone to bookshelf, we've gone beyond, and we've put it in some people's hands, we've gotten in touch with our audience. I know that Ivy or even Heather know this piece of let's talk about what is the Skill Joy Index, because that's at the heart of actually creating your working writer's lab.
I love the Skill Joy Index because I am still a full-time student. So it is really difficult for me to get all of those pieces done. So anything I don't want to do, I just make her do.
And she can tell you about that.
So she first did the Skill Joy Index, and she's like, I like writing, and I like social media, and I don't like anything else. And I'm like, okay, I guess I get to learn a lot. And so everything they're saying now kind of makes sense. So we've been doing this for about 1.5 years now, and every time I'm like, okay, I think I know what Ingram is now. Okay, cool. We're getting closer and getting closer. So it does take, it takes a village to make this happen. One of the things that we didn't touch on is you're going to have boxes and boxes of books show up at your house. So you need to make sure you have a place to put boxes and boxes of books.
This is very true.
Yeah, and so her desk that we built her before she was born, that she never actually used, is now her book storage area. So it worked out great. But yeah, have that in mind as well, of where in the world you're going to put all of these.
IKEA is great.
Well, we actually ended up doing different boxes, but yeah. If you have pets, make sure everything is sealed. And
Put
I
them
will
up
say-
because floods happen.
Floods
Make sure
happen.
you
Right,
get
ours is
them
on the
up.
first floor, not the basement.
An inch and a half on a piece of
Yeah.
wood, something.
Yeah,
Yep.
and I will say, when you're starting out, do not make the mistake of mass ordering 1,000 some books unless you truly plan to go to events and quite regularly, because otherwise you're putting a lot of money in where you could be utilizing some of those funds for your next book, in the editing portions and stuff. But that's something that you decide. If this is your one book and you're like, this was the thing I wanted to do, and I don't plan on doing another one, and you don't have to worry about those budgeting, go for it. But I would say, as young, early on authors, figure out, okay, buy a few hundred, and see, okay, if I go to a convention, I'm selling 50 at a convention, right? You can start mapping and planning that out. So start a little small and then expand from there. And you can use those funds.
Look at your lists. Look at the names that you've been gathering. So as you've been doing this pre-launch, as you've been setting up this email and sending out like newsletters and keeping people in that ideation and communicating with them, find a way that you're collecting their emails. And if you have 500 emails, you do not need 500 books.
Like 10%
If
of
you need
that.
if you have 500 emails and that's all you've collected, that's okay. Start with 50 books. You're going to sell 10% of them and grow from there and grow from there and grow from there. And
Some of them are
that's
interested in you,
Yes.
and some are
Correct.
interested in the books.
Yep,
Both
exactly.
are valuable.
Family and friends is a big thing. They will support
For
you
sure.
like I love that you're doing this. Will they buy your book? 9 times out of 10, no, they won't.
The first one.
They won't, yeah.
The first one, mooch off with your family and friends as much as possible.
Because then you
Honestly,
save money.
Exactly.
But they might also say, "Oh my gosh, I love what you write. When am I getting a book?"
Yeah.
That's what you're going to hear from your
Yeah.
family.
They're like,
Yeah.
when are you getting?
When are you
No,
getting
we
this
we
book?
made grandma buy the first one. There was no free books.
Yeah.
Now, the second one, we gave out a couple free books because we had a little seed money. So we're like, okay, it's Christmas, you can have a book.
So it talks kind of like surfacey about, so Ivy doesn't like something, so basically she doesn't,
Yes.
her skill joy index is, I'm either doing it or giving it to mom. So the actual definition
Yeah.
is to look at that entire process, bucket list, bookshelf and beyond, and look at that whole process and say, am I skilled in it? Do I get joy from it? And you basically are going to end up in several quadrants. If you are skilled in it and you get joy from it, this is now one of your monetizable working writer pieces. So for instance, Tiffany talked about, hey, I really like doing the marketing, I'm in that. So she can market for authors. Your books aren't going to pay the bills right away. Some of you are going to get struck by lightning, and that's going to be the thing that pays.
That's
the
what we
bills.
hope for. We
want
all
to
want
that.
that.
But in the meantime, at least be in your
Yeah.
world. At least be like, yeah, I'm working in marketing for authors, so I'm still in the working writer world, but I'm actually making some money over here while I'm putting my books out. If you're skilled in it, but you really don't get joy from it, when you have the money, you can pass it off. But you're going to do it on your own until then because you have the skill. If you're unskilled in it, but you get joy from it, you're going to have to learn. This is going to come alongside somebody like Chris is great in Kickstarters. I haven't done Kickstarters for my books. I'll come alongside him and be like, hey, I'm going to learn this from him in order to, because then I'm going to get the joy from it. And if you're unskilled and you hate that thing, that's where you're going to spend your money. You're actually going to be like, so that sweet spot is I'm skilled in it and this is joyful to me.
Those are your money makers.
That's your monetizable part of your writer's model. So to those things, you're going to look the whole thing and you're like, I have these 10 things along the track of creating my own books that I'm like, wow, I'm really skilled in it and I get joy from it. I want to monetize those 10 things. That's where the model comes in. And so where do we go from there?
So once you have an idea about what it is you want to do, I mean, there's the route of you can do a sole proprietorship, you can build out your LLC, which means you need an EIN number, and yeah, and this is where you're starting to build out then your website and your services page. So this is where you're starting to focus. This is how I need to package this, right? For instance, I do web development and marketing, right? So when people go to my site, you can work with Rose, right? And you can determine these are the packages, this is the things that cost that. And so you need to start building out that portion of your business. So if your books aren't selling, or not that they're not selling, but if, for instance, like you're growing yet and you're still being established, you still have monetizable income that allows you to have more free time to write and to do those things.
Or that's how you choose your major in college.
Yeah.
So Ivy likes sales and she likes writing. So she is going to study strategic political communication and sell politicians to people. So evidently that's what she's going to do to make some money while she's also being an author, because politics is like 6 months, and then you have a year and a half to write. So that's one of the plans.
What else? So Chris is like, I don't know, I'm checking my next event.
Yeah, it's like buzz in my pocket. So.
But I think also, so then when you have, what happens is we as artists, we are naturally, like, we're in the craft, we're in the art, our hearts and our empathy and our compassion, it's all kind of part of what we do. And we turn off that business brain sometimes. You have to actually turn that business brain on. And you have to take that art and now those 10 or 15 things that you said, these are my monetizable things. And hopefully it's not 10 or 15, hopefully it's like 5.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Like when I'm saying 10 or 15, like some of those are actually under one thing.
Yes,
Like I can be a co-writer. In that case, I'm actually doing writing and editing and helping with, I'm doing the number of tasks in that. You're gonna take those things and you're gonna apply actual, legit, entrepreneurial, proven skills, just like they use in the corporate world, So you're gonna start with writing your mindset. You're like, okay, I love my art, but Grandpa, you gotta pay for the book. You gotta pay for the book because I'm investing my time, my talent in this. So I need to get my mindset right. And that's honestly that first step that you're gonna do. So what would be the next thing?
The next thing is developing your craft. So really building out the way that you create, and so like whether that's figuring out your outline or pantser, really solidifying your process. So that way when you go into a project, you know exactly what you need to be as effective as possible to get that work count out and to get that next book out, right? So understanding how to line up those artists, line up your layout, your editor, and essentially build out your system of developing your craft. So that way it becomes like this.
Craft is one of those things that you learn more the more you do it. Your first draft is not going to be your best draft. Your first book, probably not going to be as well written as your next book.
Your next book should always be the better one, is what it should be, because it's an ever improving thing. If you're looking at your book and you're like, I've made it, no, you didn't.
Many people have asked me to buy my first book. I'm like, I will begrudgingly pull this from underneath the table. I carry it only for people who specifically ask for your first published work.
I will say I don't have any shame over my early books.
It
Once
doesn't
I
sell
look
as
back,
well.
it doesn't. I would look at them now and I'm like, wow, I wouldn't write it
Just
that
touch
way.
them up. Just quick go in there.
Like,
Touch them up.
just-
I have read mine and gone, this is enjoyable, but also not from a craft perspective, not my
Not well
most
developed.
quality craft.
Yeah.
But it shouldn't be, because
Right.
I hope within like 20 years, your first book is
Oh,
not
God.
the same level as your
Hey, I feel like there's some shade. It has been, since my first book came out, it's been 19 years. Like you're,
Listen, I tried not to date you. That was not what I was doing at all. No, but I would really hope that your first book wouldn't be at the same level as your most recent one, because you should be improving. As authors, reading is mandatory. You have to read. You have to learn what other people are doing right. Learn from the whales. Learn from those examples, right? And figure out what it is they're doing that's right. But obviously, you need to bring a voice that's yours. You need to bring the talent that is yours. But learn from everyone else around you.
so I had, this is several years ago now, I had a guy who came up and he's like, oh man, I'm also an author, because people who are writing something love to tell you, like, can I tell you about my book? I'm
Well, a
like,
lot of times we
well,
like it.
I'm
It depends on how crazy busy we are at the beginning.
So I'm
If
talking
we
to
have 10
him.
people in front of us, don't stop us to tell us about your story then.
So this guy goes, I have this amazing idea, it's gonna be the best book ever. Listen, nobody's ever written a book as good as I can write a book. Go, well, what are you reading now? I don't read books.
Oh, I remember this guy.
I'm like, sir, I think you need to leave.
I remember this guy. I think that
Now
was
you can
Here's
read
the
your
eye.
books by listening to them because we all did it. So that counts. That counts.
Listening to them is important. You should. Oh, was it F. Scott Fitzgerald? Or no, Slinger. No, I don't know. It was one of the big ones. But he essentially said that if you read it out loud and it doesn't sound natural, then you need to rewrite it.
Right.
Because it should come
I
off
think
as
it was
like a.
F. Scott.
Yeah, I thought
I
it was.
think it is.
I thought it was Fitzgerald. Yeah, I was like,
So business model,
Sorry, he's not a
you
great
have to
example in
remember
life, but-
to keep that craft at the heart, because at the end of the day, that's why you got into it. And we're gonna talk like some of the other things that you're gonna wanna build out in that entrepreneurial project. So you're gonna need 3 different types of systems. So these are like kind of 3 more steps. So we've got your writing your mindset, we've got your developing your craft. You're gonna need a system for your work. Now that could be like, how do I work? When do I work? It could be like, how much time am I putting into this? You know, what are my tasks? How am I keeping track of my tasks? What is like your process? What are your work systems?
Time audit yourself.
Yes.
That is something all of us need in our lives, is to time audit.
And that one goes into the next system,
Yeah.
because you need a time system.
Mhm.
So you need systems for how you're going to schedule, when you're going to schedule. Our 4th working writer coach, who's not with us, Tony, he talks about capacity planning. All corporations and businesses, they do capacity planning. They're not gonna launch a new product at the same time that they're launching a new product, at the same time that they're launching a new product. So we shouldn't do that.
Except us.
We do that, I know. We shouldn't, but we shouldn't, because when we focus, when we pull back, and then we're like, okay, we're gonna put out this now and focus on this, and then it gets better. So,
It helps
and
with
you
your
burn out.
2 heads though. It does
does.
help, yeah.
It does. And then your 3rd kind of system that you're gonna have in place is your schedule. So you need to have a budget, I'm sorry, I said schedule was time. So you have your work systems, which is about your process. Your next thing is you need to put in place your time systems, and then you need to put in place your budget systems. So we've got writing mindset, we've got developing your craft, we've got 3 different types of systems, and then, go ahead.
And then we also have building your community, which can be anything from just the people that you see at cons regularly to those people you are working with individually and are really pushing you to work your best. So as someone who has very, very recently started actually working at cons, I met these lovely ladies and Chris. I actually met them at a convention, and I was pushed by this person to actually go up and talk to them, and that was like one of the best decisions ever.
Oh, you were so cute that first time. It was at like Yale 2 years ago.
Yes,
And she was like, and now we have learned that that was an act.
That was her time. Yeah, she's So, but they let me like help behind the booths and sell my anthologies, or the anthologies we're all in together, and get that practice so that when I go out to do it by myself, I'm not cowering behind the booth, which is something that would definitely happen if I was just thrown out there.
Vendors do that.
Right.
Yeah,
Yes.
and they don't do well at the shows usually. If you find a vendor, unless you have, I'm sorry, if Ed is sitting behind a table on a chair against the wall, I'm still gonna be approaching Ed Greenwood. I mean, don't get me wrong, but I'm not Ed Greenwood yet. So therefore, I need to stand, I need to engage, I need to like, be vibrant and energetic and pleasant.
Yeah.
Says our little horror writer. So yeah, community, I mean, I don't know, like Chris, we've done stuff together we've met even before Tiffany and I met, like you and I, like
many years ago.
we've like really, I've leaned on you so many times that I've reached out and I'm like, hey, I've never done this thing, you've done this thing, tell me about the thing.
Yeah.
Sometimes,
Share lots of show notes.
yeah. Oh, you will need somebody, whatever your sales route is. So when you talk about like sharing show notes, when you have other authors in your community, you're gonna need those honest people who are gonna give you the real lowdown. So there are some really wonderful online communities. We will happily recommend some of them to you. There are some where people will post their cool sales reports from a show. Congratulations, you know about a third of the story because you don't know what their expenses were, you don't know what they're costing, what they're paying for their inventory, and you want to have people in your community, and all of us have these conversations, and Chris and I look at like what was your true bottom line out of that show?
Yeah.
What did you actually put in your bank account?
Subtract the hotel room, subtract the gas, subtract, yeah.
I have a little book called Sell More Books at Live Events, and I have a lot of the honest numbers. Like here's a breakdown. Here's the actual cost of the show. Here's the expected attendance count. Here's how many I sold. Here's about, on average, what I'm making per book. So you can get a serious idea of the bottom line. And like, here's a smaller show with a smaller whatever, but I had much lower expenses because I had a buddy 30 minutes away. And I can drive into the show and not have my hotel costs, not have the high food costs. And you can see that the smaller shows, I'm making more money, I'm selling fewer books. So then you decide, do I need just to be more to grow our readership, or do I need the money so I can buy my next thing? I've got.
He has this thing when he talks, and so at the end of like a show day, we've gotten used to we all know
I
it.
guess
We all
it's
know
bad.
it. We're like, okay, it's not a long day of talking. He's getting his hiccups.
But yes, knowing why you're doing the show, like what are like is it purely to eat, or is it also these other things, the building the community, the people on my newsletter?
And yeah, absolutely, because those are gonna feed into that bottom line eventually. So like, there are some shows that you're like, I'm not gonna make a lot of this show, but I'm going to make some contracts at this show. You and I have worked shows where
We literally
we
have
made
contracts
we made like
tonight.
$200 maybe.
Yeah.
But then we signed with somebody who wants us to write something for a few thousand. And so like, and we're now also building our library, and we're now also building our and that all comes from community. And while you can get it online, and we certainly have online community,
That's what
there's,
yeah.
I mean, getting out to the live shows, it's so valuable. It's so valuable if you can get yourself, and I don't care if it's a tiny, tiny little con. There are some, we can connect you with ones that are, you're gonna pay like $35 to get in. And so they exist, they start, you build, and it's good stuff. So you've got your sales is kind of what you were starting to touch on, but before the sales, the other piece of the model is really your.
Yeah, well, I want to say one more thing about the build your community, and this is something that, is that we are not competitors. We are colleagues.
Yeah.
Chris, Jeri, and I, we all have written in the same genre. We've all participated in the similar anthologies. We all have the same anthologies at our table.
Correct.
And that's down there. We all sell it, and it works. We are not competing against one another. We are only there to help uplift and build one another. And I've stood and I've sold Chris's books, and I've sold Jeri's books, and
I've
I
sold
sold
everybody's
others.
books.
And not even just that. If I truly believe like someone's coming in and they're describing exactly the plot that's in one of their books, I'm like, you should read this one, right? Because I know that that's going to give them the best experience, you know. And that's what it comes down to, is I want to uplift them, and I want to sell them because they deserve it just as much as I do. And that's what building a community really is.
And reading a book is a little like eating. If you eat, you're not only going to eat a Big Mac once in your life. Some days you might have Big Mac. Some days you might have a quarter pound of cheese. Some days you might be in the mood for a Taco Bell.
Are you hungry?
Just saying.
Are you hungry?
Or a consumable commodity.
Yes.
Exactly.
And our flavors, we might have a thing that we like, but a lot of times they'll branch out a couple degrees. So that's why none of us feel jealous, because we know while somebody might be having a high selling weekend, that might be me next weekend, and I'm happy to sell what I sell this weekend.
Yep.
And we got enough overlap that people that have a good experience will remember me from before, and they might now buy my book at this show.
And cross exposure, like we're all on each other's Facebooks, we're all on each other's like any social media or websites.
We need to do a newsletter thing soon.
Yeah, so and we help each other out that way too. So if I help Chris sell a book, I know he's gonna help me in return because he's gonna say something in the newsletter, right? And we all kind of just help each other.
So one thing about community that we had to work through is that your beta readers happen to be people that live in your house when you start. Okay?
Yeah.
And so a year ago, she was writing her first going to be published, we knew for sure, short story. And she printed out a copy for me, and she printed out a copy for Natalie. Okay? And so we make the copies, and then we put it at her spot in the table. Well, I happened to look at the copy that Dad did, and Dad took a very long time to do this. And I looked at it, and it was covered in red. And I'm like, you cannot do that to her. Like, you can't. And he's like, well, but I was making it better. I'm like, okay, but you were making it sound like you were gonna write it. Instead of making it sound like she's gonna write it. Like, she's building her voice. She's built, so you need to make sure that nobody's gonna, stamp out your voice when you have them read it for the first time. So then I had him take a different color, and he colored in the structural things that needed to be fixed. And then he said, he took it back. He didn't put it at her spot at the table. I said, you need to go over this with her so that she doesn't freak out and see just all red and just destroy her life right now. And so he did. He did a very nice job. He's an educator too. And so I'm like, you can't do that to her quite yet.
And I live with 2 teachers.
Yeah.
College teachers.
Yeah.
It's always rough. Usually I have my friends read it first.
We're really good with that red pen. It's kind of our deal. So we both step back a little bit, where are we at in the process? And so if you have these really fabulous supportive people in your life that can do that kind of pre-writing, editing with you, it's super helpful and can help.
Right.
You
want to have those people as well as the people who will just say, oh, you're amazing and I love everything you do.
correct. Because she's
But
got
don't
her friends
want that.
read
People have
things,
flaws.
and it's not
Right.
super helpful.
Right.
You need to find the people who actually provide good criticism. So all what they're doing is just talking about making it better. Like, that was a plot hole. I didn't quite understand the imagery you were going for in this scene. Things that will be like, oh, I have a solution to that. They're not telling you how to fix it. They're saying there's a problem, right? So that's a big difference between someone who's trying to write your book and overshadow you, or someone who's just trying to please you, right? If I've fired beta readers when they come back saying it was great, I'd be like, what's more? I mean, more than that, yeah. And then they came back and they're like, I promise I'll do better, because they just want early access. But I mean, it's important to have people who are going to be honest and direct with you, and that's a big part of your developmental. But one of the next steps in our 9 working steps of the working model is the marketing and launches of your work, right? Now, once you start, you will never end. There is no dull period in which you're working, right? In terms of marketing and preparing for your next launch. Yeah.
True things have never been said.
Yeah. And I mean, a big thing is you need engagement, consistency, and I mean, any algorithm that exists on our talks about consistency, quality of content, and engagement, right? Those are big 3 qualifiers. How these algorithms on social media, even on SEO with websites, right? It wants constant updates. It wants to know that you're interacting with the website as much as people are coming back to interact with it, right? So it is a never-ending job, but there's ways to make it slightly easier, right? And that's by using marketing funnels and drips and having people automate and newsletters, right? Chris is fantastic with his newsletters in terms of letting people know where he's at and what he's doing and where to get this or what's launching here, and just having constant communication. That'll be for the rest of your life. So congratulations, you've signed your warrant. But it's great, but it allows you to feel and understand what your audience is wanting, right? Because you can help gauge that. That's how I found out that I needed to write a novella series for my books, because they wanted to know what the side characters were up to. And it's through those processes that you can even begin a next crafting project, or this is a service that people are needing, and you can kind of gauge, and it can filter into so many other.
It helps point you where you need to spend your energy.
Exactly.
with
Yeah.
feedback.
Absolutely. So I'll shut up about marketing.
No,
Sorry.
that's okay. So here's the thing. One of the things we always say when we talk about the work, can kind of walk through the whole thing. So the idea is identify everything that exists in this whole process. Identify where you have skill and joy that you can monetize, and then apply to those things while you're doing your own art creation. Also apply to those things that you can monetize. The model of write your mindset, develop your craft, build your community, work systems, time systems, budget systems, sales and marketing, production and distribution. It's going to be like getting it all up there, like we talked about, as well as getting the book finished, and then your sales and your sales and events. And so those are your 9 steps. You're going to apply to those things. What we're always telling people is we're like, if you want to know what the working writer model is, look at that first word. It's working. I think there are a lot of people, and that's going to take you all the way back to the mindset, that first step. There are a lot of people who are like, I'm a writer, and they want to say, I'm a writer and I'm an author. And you know what? If that's what you want, and you want to put out your one book and say, I'm a writer, that's beautiful. If that fills your soul, it's not going to fill your bank account also. So you have to remember that working part, and you can get great joy out of that writer part if that working part is less stressful.
Colleen Hoover, I know there's some controversy, I think, around her right now, but I have no idea. But controversy around everything. I was like, I think there's something going on there. But I will say this is that with she was indie originally, and she wrote multiple books before she landed a traditional publisher, in which then she became a white whale, right? She blew up. Now there's movies and I think nail polish. I think she has like a nail polish like line or something. I think
The whole site.
For somebody,
Yeah, it's like-
for somebody who doesn't care, you know a lot
It's
about
because
Colleen Hoover.
I don't know what's going on with her right now, but I remember seeing that because I was like, it's related to her books, and I was like, that is the most interesting IP I think I've ever heard of from an author. Is like a nail polish line with her book titles. I was like, so clever.
I know,
But-
she did a martini book because her characters were always,
Oh,
she
that's-
gave them like these creative
Right.
names. You know Maggie?
Sorry, that was like a spin-off.
she
of
did
it.
that.
I was like, she did a nail
Yeah,
polish.
you never know like what
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
going
right.
to be that you're gonna make.
Yeah,
So
that came into my head. But in terms of just because you like, she at one point now, even though she's like a whale and she's rolling it in with her books, she was at one point a working writer. She was doing what she needed to do in order to be a creative entrepreneur, right? So there's instances like that where the term overnight success does not exist for anyone. Like I cannot think of an example of someone just boom, they're in, right?
even the people who are instantly found, there's work between
They've
that
done
being
that.
found
Yes.
and actually finding a
15 years,
success.
16
Exactly.
years.
Yes,
Exactly.
Like in the story.
There is no like, this is my day one on the job and I made it. Like there is no example of that exists. So it may look like it a lot of times when you look at these big names and you're like, I've never heard of them until boom, now they're everywhere. But
That's what Hollywood sells you.
yeah,
Because that's sensational. People don't like to focus on the idea that we
the
work
hard
for
work.
it. So that's not the dream.
So I want to take a second, I want to open it up to some questions. I think we've kind of hit this pretty thoroughly, but what I'd like to do is kind of like, give us like the 30-second, like what is your working writer model? And then, Ivy, just talk about what it's been, and Heather, how you've supported as you're building yours. So, go ahead.
So I write my own novels. I have licensed a few different IPs so that I'm writing in other worlds as well. In addition to my novels, I'm using things like Kickstarter, direct sales, in addition to being wide, so I'm available in Ingram. You can order me through bookstores, but you also have to know about me because I'm not necessarily just on the shelves. So I spend a lot of time boosting my own signal and having friends do the same through the newsletter. I write short stories. Short stories will end up in anthologies that multiple people are selling, so that helps steer some attention back to myself, as well as working in different IPs and things that exist, and supporting myself writing short stories in those worlds as well as the game writing world, so that I can eat, I guess. So that's paid work, but it's also prestige work. I've written stuff for Shadowrun. I've written stuff for Luke's Aquaman. I've written stuff for Guild Force 9, Breeze and Browncoats. It's a Firefly IP. So I can drop those little hints and things that I've done, which reflects quality back to myself, and then will establish a connection to me to sell more stuff through building a relationship.
So, obviously I have my books and I've about 125 books out. I am a cross-genre author, everything from plays, kids books, up to like writer's resources, nonfiction, biography, sports writing. I've done it. I've done all the things.
Romance.
Right. That's one romance, yeah.
It was very,
But
I need a copy.
yeah. So I have my books and my games because I also write and develop games. I run a publishing label, which is anthologies as well as independent authors. I've run a couple of different publishing labels. That's kind of always been there. I'm a convention programmer around the country. While most of the conventions that I'm running programming for, I'm not necessarily paid, but all of my expenses get paid, which all of a sudden makes that convention now something that is profitable. So that's kind of where my convention programming piece comes in. And really the bulk of my income as a working writer is in the writing. I am a hired writer for other properties, for other individuals, everything from doing celebrity biography, which I spent 12 years of my career in celebrity biography. I was never a ghostwriter. I do say co-writing because I got cover credit and copyright page credit so that I could actually use it to market myself to get the next one. That was that co-writing. Today I work with Luke Gygax as well. I work with Legends of Evantress. I work with Good Knack with You, which we got the opportunity to write with Ed. That was great.
We're almost no notes on our last revision,
Yes,
so we're
nice.
full steam
Good
ahead.
go.
Have you seen New Girl?
So no notes. So really, those are my things. It's my books and my games. It's my convention planning. It's my co-writing that I do. And I also have my coaching and my publishing. So those are 5 I've identified.
Yeah. So I am an author publicist. I'm also a marketing affiliate. I also do website development. I've done it for, right now I'm working with some Emmy Award winning filmmakers on their website, which has been pretty fun. I've written for Luke Gygax's own as well. Co-writing for Arpex. And so building out my library beyond just like the books that I write in my literary fiction and fantasy. I also delve into game writing for my own stuff, what we both do, as well as game development and publication. Jason here. We also publish people's game systems as well as make our own. I also help run RPG sides of conventions and also the writer's track at some as well. Trying to think of all the things that I do.
Oh, well, we
It's
are
so
listing
yeah.
all of them. Like I didn't even try to
Yeah,
tell
yeah.
them. I'm just saying like these are like my
Right.
5 biggies,
Yeah,
my
yeah.
pillars.
Yeah,
So,
but I think that, and live shows is a big one too. So those are kind of the things that I do. But more importantly, those are the things that I absolutely love to do. Not a single one of those is one is like, oh, I have to do it because I need money. No, I only do the things that I enjoy doing.
So what has it been like, and this can be kind of a Heather ID combo answer on building yours and discovering what your model needs to look like?
So I've been, for the developing your craft, build your community, a lot of it is working on those short stories for anthologies, because that gets you in touch with other authors, and it also gives you something to sell at your table that's a little thicker than like 3 pages of a short story. And something that either friends of ours have done or we have done is donating a book to a local library. I've actually been invited to events because of that.
Yeah, you're becoming events.
Because they find my book library and they're like, oh, we're having an arts day at our elementary school. We should invite this author who lives in the area.
Yeah.
So that
Split a full
builds
day
out
of
these
careers.
Like the
things.
horror
Yeah,
author.
it was-
Yeah, the horror
The
horror author comes to the
It was something. It was something.
She's got more for the horror. Yeah. Of course, none of that is paid yet, right?
Right.
We're working
Yeah.
up to that. So last last summer was really our market, like let's get the business up and running in time for the launch of Otherworldly #1. And so I took care of all of that and would like as she ran by, I'm like, you like this? Yeah, cool. Okay, cool. And so everything from our brand color, which is purple, to the fonts and the stuff, I did all of that. I attempt to keep track of all the money. That is probably the hardest thing. That's probably the first thing we will hire somebody to do, or maybe get my husband to do it because he's more of a money person. I just like spending it. So that's where we're in our session. That's on our calendar. Yay! You can message him. The other thing that's been big for Ivy is just carving out time to write. Right. So she has a novel deal, and she had a little bit of a struggle getting into each portion of the novel writing. And so that's where I came in as the cheerleader, and I said, hey, let's do some storyboarding. Grab your Post-it notes. I'll sit there while you do it, and if you have questions, you can bounce ideas off me. So we do a lot of body doubling. Yeah, we both have a little tinge of ADHD.
That's part of the work system.
Yes.
So I found that the best way I work is if someone is working next to me.
Correct.
So if she will bring her rating up while I do that, I don't need to talk to her.
No.
I just need someone there. So that if I stop working, I'll feel embarrassed.
Yes.
Love working in public places because if I stop writing, they're gonna see.
They're gonna judge you.
They're gonna
so
judge
hard.
me.
They
There's
know.
a principle called shared suffering.
Yes.
Yes.
And that
And
was it.
it's very big. As long as you can go through all kinds of hoops as long as you know somebody else is also not enjoying their life.
We had a Friday night, and
It's a
she's like,
commiseration.
I need to get this done. And I'm like, I don't want to grade on Friday night. I guess I will. So I did. It was awful. But it got done. So that was good. So yeah, a lot of those things and nitpicky things, setting up events. We have our first solo event coming up soon. So I know, it's kind of crazy.
I'm so excited.
I know, it's pretty exciting. And so that's a big one for us, and just making sure our calendar's blocked. Yeah. If you can find someone to pay you hourly to write and to read, I highly recommend it. That's her job right now. So we pay.
They don't let me get a job.
She can't have a job because she has too much to do. So we pay her a very small hourly rate to read and write, so that she has spending.
that.
I know. It's like $6
Ivy
only child.
has been a part of our like formal coaching program. Ivy could not, and I mean this with great respect, but like she couldn't be here without the kind of support that she's getting.
Oh yeah.
I mean, like literally, it's just amazing. And so thank you for being so
absolutely.
supportive of her art in this.
Yeah.
But we wanted to open it up. What you've gotten an opportunity to see is really all these different levels, because Ivy's in the middle of building her model. Tiffany, you've been doing this for 3 years, and Chris and I have been doing this for a few decades. And so like you're kind of like, it doesn't matter where you are, the same principles apply. And that's kind of the idea. So we want to open it up to some questions for you guys. Ask us anything.
So Chris.
Yeah.
As a consumer, why does somebody buy a book through Kickstarter? I don't understand.
So here's what's great about Kickstarter, and we are doing a whole separate panel on this. Kickstarter backers are not just consumers, they're supporters. So people on Kickstarter are excited to help make something come to life. So they get a hand in that. It's I don't want to give that example, so I'm gonna steer away from that. But yeah, they get to have their hand in it, see and know that they were a part of the process, even if just on the financial side. Plus there are extras. So sometimes you back something just because you want it, you have the consumer mindset. And that's also okay, because you kind of want both of the people. For instance, a couple of years ago, Zombicide, actually Haven behind you, remember, we used to play a lot of Zombicide together. And I picked up the TMNT, the Ninja Turtles. They had 2 packs of Zombicide stuff. They licensed the TMNT stuff. They made some minis. It was cool. It just fit right into the standard play. And after a while, I got so bored of the game. I play this game all the time. Everybody's kind of just over it. those are $25 a piece. There's little things that you could get and super cool that help the project come to life. But now they're pretty rare. I got 10 times what I paid for them. I'm like, hey, anybody want these? They're like,
Some
oh, they're
collectors.
really rare. So because it was like an exclusive access to the IP, to the product.
Well, and
So there's a different mindset.
I recently backed Chris's. I just did the ebook because I prefer ebooks. So we decided to get the first of a series signed, and then we put that on the shelf. But the rest of them, I'm just going to get ebooks. And so I did it because then I got to see how it was being run, and I'm supporting him early, and that helps build the momentum. And then I can put on my Facebook, hey, I supported this guy's Kickstarter. You should too. So it's helping with that marketing.
How does it help you?
So Kickstarter is about building enthusiasm. It's not necessarily just about building the money.
It's not.
So you have to know exactly what all the pieces are that you're trying to pull out of the thing. Like you could go to a really small or even bad or poorly performing, poorly selling Comic-Con, but you know everybody there is like a target market. They're probably not buying, but they might sign up for my newsletter and want to engage with me. And so there's a value to that. And so that's my highest priority is that, but also I want the sales. So you kind of want to know what all the pieces are to focus on. So with Kickstarter, there's this enthusiasm, momentum building. I don't try to, so for instance, I just did, this is on the Kickstarter, it's got the fancy gold foil, it's got the foil embossing, it's also got it's got these really cool, it's real, so that's very trendy on Kickstarter right now. To do a big print run on this is a lot of money. I was not trying to raise all of that money, so it wasn't like, hey, we need to raise $6,000 just for you to get the book. I'm like, I want to raise $1,500 because I've already owned up. I believe in this thing. I've already actually paid, like it's already in production. But what I'm paying for, and what I'm trying to raise a little bit in the difference, is I know based on my working writer's model, I know what my distribution system looks like. I know I'm going to blow through these as soon as I have them on hand. People are like, that's sexy. I want it. Can I have it now? And if I have it, they'll say yes and just hand over the money. So what I'm doing is I'm shoring up that difference in the meanwhile, building enthusiasm, and then the money comes in that's going to offset some of my immediate loss. And now I've got a big pallet of books, and I also have a method planned and prepared for me to market those and move those out to people. So I know I'm going to sell through a pallet of these things within the next year. So once all the pieces are in place, I use it primarily to generate enthusiasm. The money is also fantastic, but it doesn't cover all of that because that's not what it was intended for.
And that's one of the things that people need to understand. If you're going the Kickstarter route, there is a difference between games and books. Typically, when you're doing a book through the Kickstarter route, that book is done. It's almost like a pre-order. It's really the way that's functioning for you. As opposed to a game, a lot of the games, they're Kickstarter backed and they're still in development of that game.
But not always.
Not always, sometimes not.
So I have 3 in here. I have a QR code where you can hop on and do not a backing, but a watch. So you can watch these things for a long time. And then if I don't have your email, you're not on my list because you're very cagey with your email address, which I totally respect. When it does go live, then Kickstarter, as the trusted intermediary, will send out an email. That thing that you like, that you expressed an interest in maybe 2 years ago, is live now, and now you can back it. So there are lots of little tools. It's very smart. It's intuitive, and I feel like Kickstarter is one of the best ways nowadays to launch your book, especially if you're an indie that has a following but not a name recognition.
Any other questions about anything?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
What would be your recommendation for somebody who hates doing marketing, especially self-marketing, is terrible at it, and is starting from zero?
In a mom.
I'll let you take that. So, I mean, a big thing is there are people who will do it for you. And that's kind of the thing. It's like, is that within your budget? Is that a portion of what you're saving for is someone to help you market? Or I have like a book launch program, right? So I help you walk through 6 months of marketing, and I help give you squares and teach you how to do the thing. And there's
things like that. Working Writers Mastermind teaches you about the marketing portion. But if you hate the thing, you don't want to do the thing, that's either you got to pony up if you don't have the budget and be like, okay, the first thing is consistency. That's what really needs to start, is just once a week even, just put something out and talk about what it is you're doing. Did you write today? What was your word count? What was the ideation process? How was the outline? Talk about your day as if you're talking to a bunch of friends. That's like what I tell a lot of early authors who are like this, they're literally zero, don't have a book, don't have anything, they just want to build awareness around who they are, is just talk about you. Talk to people as if you're friends, because right now it is your friends. Those are the people you're talking to.
I think that's what most of the readers really resonate with,
Yeah.
because they want to know the real you. They want to know the human you,
Yeah.
not the story. And there's a huge movement, and that's why indies are kicking the traditional publishers' butts.
Yeah, we are.
Because you have access to the authors. You can ask those questions.
We show
You
up to
don't,
things
you,
like
you don't get that with your favorite Penguin Random House author.
I would say also, especially early on, and I definitely did this on like some of the earlier part of my career, is find a buddy who you can be exchanging with. Like, hey, you like doing this marketing thing. I don't have budget for this marketing thing, but you need this other thing that I do like. Can we help each other out? I'll edit you. Can you get my marketing squares together? Can you at least set up my templates for me? You know, I'll give you your copy for that. And if you set up my templates, now I actually have a thing that I can just throw out there every week. And it's really simple. So if you don't have the money, we have this expression in our mastermind that's like, time buys money, money buys time, and the right activities buy both. And so if you don't have the money, where can you invest your time, which might be in an exchange sort of situation. If you don't have the time, then where can you invest your money? And if you don't have anything, then just write activities. What is like the minimal thing that you need to do in that area, and how can you do that right?
If you don't like selling yourself, I mean, that's not what you do. You sell your books, but you're like,
No, you do sell
I mean,
yourself.
yeah,
Yeah.
yes, you do sell it.
It sounds wrong, but it's
It
right.
does. Share a booth with someone.
Yeah.
Right, like who can sell anything to anyone. I'm really glad she figured out books before used cars, because we're pretty sure that is an option for her in the future. But yeah, so she sold at these people's booths, and so that's what helped her get the confidence,
Right.
to really say, yes, here's a book. Would you like it? And so just gaining that experience, and then, you know, if you split the cost of a booth, then that makes it easier too to handle it, and you get more profit for each book you sell.
Yeah, early on, splitting costs with our authors who are at your same level is really key.
Oh, and we split costs in a lot of ways. We stay at each other's homes. When we're traveling away from where any of us live, we will split hotel rooms, we will split meals, we will go in together. If somebody has a hotel room that has like a kitchen, we'll go in together and like grocery shop, so we don't have to like eat out. I mean, like, we are cheap. Y'all, we are like, we find those thrifty shortcuts until you get to that point where the
Being an
conventions
author
cover
is
your room,
being
they
a
cover your
small
stuff.
business
It is
owner.
being a small business, yeah, absolutely.
You have to think like an entrepreneur.
Okay, there was another question.
Aiden, you had a question?
Well, I was going to throw in a question about Kickstarters there, especially for Chris. As a young author, as a young author, if I was starting out, when should I start trying to do Kickstarters? Say I've already written a book, or maybe I haven't even written a book. When should I, and what are the steps required?
So I would focus on my media first. Get a group of people that aim for a couple hundred people, like on a newsletter, on some social media,
Build that
and
awareness.
build the awareness to you as the author, and don't launch yet. Build some buzz. You need a little hype.
You need
And what I know you guys have all seen, because you've seen me share my documents, how I run a Kickstarter, is I will have, even if it's a small newsletter, I will do swap with other people. Like, hey, I have a book launch in 6 months, and plan for it 6 months from now. That means I'm going to do 2 things on my Facebook per month, and I'm going to promote I'm going to promote 2 other Kickstarters, because I want to start building a culture of crowdfunding within my followers and my backers. use the hashtags, use the things.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna get those, like, will you share me in 6 months? So you've got 6 months, and you've got 12 people on social media. You've got, if you do 2 of them on a monthly newsletter, you got another 12. I have 24 references coming back. And then also I'm going to arrange once a week so that's 4, plus when I do a Kickstarter backer update, there's probably another 4, that's another 8 on a backer update. I'm gonna share yours, I just need a reciprocal, you share mine when they're active. So now I've got roughly 50 mentions of my newsletter within a qualified market, people that are interested in backing books, the product within a similar genre. And now I have that deluge of conversation, have them all coming out within a targeted window so that I now have a base I can count on. And that's gonna get me to, it's not gonna get me to $10,000 or $20,000, but it's probably gonna get me to $3,000 to $1,500, and $1,500 is $1,500. If you're using a print on demand model, your costs are literally zero.
With Kickstarter too, before you launch a Kickstarter, you need to prep with Kickstarter. So that starts by backing other people's Kickstarters, because people who back your Kickstarter want to see that you also support that community, and so having that number higher rather than lower. And there's like dollar things. You don't have to spend hundreds of dollars to launch one. There's so many.
For $1.
Yeah, like that's what. Yeah, there's
Like
like
$1
so
backers.
many $1 backers that can at least increase that number, so people could be, oh, you're in the community, you're helping support other creators
When
too.
I see something I think is cool, but I'm like, I'm probably not gonna read it though,
I
give
do
you
$1,
$1.
yeah. I want to help support it a little bit, yeah.
because it builds buzz in the algorithm.
Yeah.
Now it's not 75 support, it's now 76 that
Yep.
they had. So that's gonna start triggering things for them. Even if it's not a
Some
high
people
dollar,
interested.
it's a higher backer count. So sometimes those things factor into them having success, and a rising tide lifts all ships,
Yeah.
right? So we're all in this together, wanting to make a success, and you can help somebody else out, even just a tiny little amount.
Absolutely.
We are out of
I was just about to say that. So, we have a flyer up here if you're interested in the rest of the Gary Con Writers Track, just with all of the events. So you can either scan it, or you can take a picture of it, or you can actually grab it. And if you're interested in the Writers Mastermind, got some of those as well. We also are having a retreat in November. So for a weekend, we're gonna hang out in a really cool mansion that Chris owns. That will allow us to really sit down and resonate with your pieces of work and your writing model. And you guys get us face to face for, I think, 2.5 days. And we'll have fun activities in that.
You can make gap. You can make gap.
Yeah, sure.
Why not? Why not? Let's see if we can come, but
Thank you guys, and we hope to see you at more of the track.
the mansion is haunted. But
Mansion is
It's a beautiful, I've stayed in it, it's gorgeous.
how does this connect? I don't know either.
Oh,
There's an HDMI
yeah,
right
I was
here.
like, there
Oh,
should be a
nice,
cord.
they actually included it. Okay, cool. And then it's probably just gonna start, oh, there's a remote on the back, so if you need it.
Oh, nice.
Okay.
Like TED Talk style.
Well, I bought.
Yeah.
No, this is just the remote, so you can switch